So, I was originally going to make this video about the Warrior of Light, to continue my basic introduction to the lore, and to keep things simple. But the problem with talking about the Warrior of Light is that the player essentially fills in the role of the Warrior of Light, so any specifics on personality and backstory is really down to the player. Also, there isn't much lore about the Warrior of Light that we aren't outright shown in the game by virtue of, well, being the Warrior of Light, so I thought I'd talk instead about the various different races the player can choose in the game. Hello, I'm the Exarch, and welcome to another episode of the Lore of Eorzea. Today, we're talking about the playable races. As of the current iteration of Final Fantasy XIV, there are 8 races the player can choose from. The first 6 of these, Hyur, Elezen, Lalafell, Makote, Rogadin, and Aura, are full races with both male and female options. The last 2, the Viera and the Hrothgar, are, as of right now, half races gender-locked to females only and males only respectively. All playable races in the game have a number of things in common. They're all considered a subcategory of the Spoken, which is just a broad overarching term for any bipedal sapient, and also includes groups like the Beast Tribes, and they are all capable of channeling ether and dabbling in the arcane arts, which sets them apart from the Garleans, who are incapable of using magic at all. Each of the playable races are divided into 2 clans, differentiated by physical differences, geographical origin, culture, and lifestyle. These physical differences can be minute, like the Dunesfolk Lalafells having glossy eyes compared to the Plainsfolk, or very apparent, like the differences between the Ryan and Zayla tribes of the Aura having drastically different scale color and horn shapes. Outside of these physical appearances, and very, very minute stat changes that don't really have any effect on actual gameplay, which clan you pick is entirely down to personal preference in regards to appearance and lore. With the similarities out of the way, let's get down to what makes each of the playable races unique by breaking down their lore and characteristics. Starting with the least unique race, the Hyur. Joking aside, the Hyur are basically just humans. They're a humanoid race with no extraordinary features, and are even described as being average in height and build. They're considered the largest population in Eorzea, in the in-game lore, not looking at actual player demographics, but interestingly enough, they aren't native to the region. Instead, they came from neighboring continents. The Highlander Hyur are widely believed to be the first Hyur to reach Eorzea, migrating there during the flood of the 6th Umbral Calamity. But actually the Midlanders were there as early as the first Astral Era, though apparently they didn't stand out a whole bunch considering everyone forgot they were there. They did invent the current Eorzean alphabet, however, so that's something. Now, however, they can be found all over the region, and are considered the most studied and cultured race. As mentioned before, the Hyur are divided into 2 clans, the Highlanders and the Midlanders. The Midlanders are by far the most populous clan of Hyur in Eorzea and beyond, with a myriad of cultures and traditions that vary from region to region. They lack any substantial attributes to make them stand out from the other races, but what they lack in unique physical traits and abilities, they make up for with ingenuity and enterprise. They're described as having a particular aptitude for magic, and specific mention is made to their teleportation magic. In addition, they are generally very well studied individuals. These, along with their adaptability, are probably their defining traits. The Highlanders are described as being taller and more muscular than their Midlander counterparts. As mentioned before, they migrated to Eorzea during the 6th Umbral Era, and founded Ala-Mhigo. When Ala-Mhigo fell to the Garlean Empire, many of its citizens took refuge in Ul'dah and surrounding encampments in Thanalan, the most prominent being Little Ala-Mhigo. Culturally, they are more tribal and spiritual in nature than the scholarly Midlanders, and possess a certain ruggedness that makes them stand out. While the Hyur may be the most populous race in Eorzea now, it was actually the Elezen that were once the most prominent race in the region. The Elezen are pretty much the Final Fantasy XIV equivalent of elves. They're tall, slender humanoids with long, pointy ears and slightly longer lifespans than the other races, described as being 10 to 20% longer. According to the Elezen themselves, they are natives to Eorzea. Because of this, Elezen are, in general, a very proud race, and back in the day, they believed Eorzea to be their God's given right. This caused some problems with the Hyur back when they started migrating to the continent en masse following the 6th Umbral Calamity, and by some problems I mean bloody conflicts where they were basically at war with the Hyur. But luckily things have mostly settled down. The Elezen are divided into 2 clans, the Wildwood and the Duskwite. Back when the Elezen were being displaced by Hyurs during the 6th Astral Era, some chose to migrate to the Black Shroud. The others migrated to Kurthus and founded Ishgard, and then quickly proceeded to piss off the dragons there, but we all know how that turned out. However, when the Elezen got to the Black Shroud, they realized there were Hyur there too, and they quickly started another conflict. Luckily, or perhaps unluckily, there was another force in the Black Shroud, the Elementals, and they were so powerful that basically the Elezen and the Hyur were forced to band together just to, not die. They both collectively founded a subterranean city-state called Gomorrah, where they were relatively safe from both the Elementals of the Twelveswood and the Ixali tribes. Eventually, however, the Ixal were expelled from the forest by the Elementals, and the Hyur and Elezen learned to commune with the Elementals using conjury, and were granted permission to live in the Twelveswood proper, so they left Gomorrah. Well, most of them anyway. Some of the Elezen decided to be stubborn old grandpas and refused to leave Gomorrah, despite the mass migration of their people out of the city. The ones who stayed behind became the Duskwhite, and the ones who left became the Wildwood. Because of their subterranean home, the Duskwhite have a tendency to have darker or grayer skin, and better hearing than the Wildwood Elezen. They also tend to be rather reclusive and wary of outsiders. Wildwood Elezen, on the other hand, are renowned for their keen eyesight, and have a penchant for law and order. I should also mention that, because the Duskwhite saw the Wildwood leaving Gomorrah as betraying their home, the two clans aren't exactly best buddies. There's a lot of bad blood between them, to the extent that marriage between the two clans, or even just sharing the same surnames, is rare. Next on our list is the humble Lalafell. Nah, I'm joking. These guys are arrogant little monsters and we all know it. Emphasis on little. Lalafells are the smallest playable race in Final Fantasy XIV, maintaining a childlike, youthful appearance even into old age, which can make it difficult for the other races to tell how old they actually are. This is especially hilarious with male Lalafells, who can grow facial hair but still look like they're in elementary school. Despite their small stature and stumpy legs, Lalafells are actually quite fast and agile. They're also described as having swift reflexes and keen intellects. Lalafells were originally agricultural peoples residing in the Southern Isles, but migrated to Eorzea for trading and commerce, and became a well-established race in the realm. They have an aptitude for magic, specifically Arcanima, which is the basic behind the Arcanist class, and involves using arcane geometries to weave ether to produce specific magical effects. However, it's also notable that Chitoto, the inventor of black magic, was also a Lalafell. The Lalafell also founded the ancient cities of Nim and Monarch, and both of these factions were instrumental in the War of the Magi and the Sixth Umbral Calamity, which is definitely a video for another day. The surviving Lalafell of Nim returned to the Southern Isles and gradually became the Plainsfolk, and the Monarchy Lalafell returned to their home and eventually moved to Thanalan to become the Dunesfolk. It was the Dunesfolk that founded Ul'dah, and both the first and second Ul dynasties were of Dunesfolk lineage. Dunesfolk Lalafells have glossy membranes over their eyes to protect them from the sands and the glaring sunlight of the desert, and they also have a tendency to be more tan. Aside from these differences, both groups are very similar, and unlike the Elezen, there's no bad blood between the two clans. Lalafell culture values family and enterprise, leading many of them to become merchants and businessmen. However, they're considered to be very welcoming to outsiders, and very jovial in nature. Next up on the character creation menu would be the Makote, but this video is already getting really long, and I want to make sure the races are divided evenly. So let's instead skip ahead to one of the newer races in the game, since they have less lore than the other races and are currently less fleshed out, so they'll be shorter to go over. So I'm going to cap this video off with the Hrothgar. They're a feline race similar to the Makote, but are more burly and animalistic in appearance, covered in fur and with more cat-like faces. In fact, when they first arrived in Eorzea, the locals were hesitant to welcome them because of their bestial appearance and their inability to speak the local tongue. However, once they learned the language, tensions were eased and they were welcomed into the region. They hail from Ilzabard, and are split into two clans. The He-Lions, which in the past served under a single matriarch, and the Lost, who are a nomadic clan that engage mostly in trade professions. The Lost are likely named as such because they are independent of their queen. Appearance-wise, the He-Lions tend to have warmer colored fur, while the Lost tend to have winter colored fur. According to the lore, female Hrothgar are rare, seldom seen by the other races. It's even possible that they aren't even leonine in nature, as the in-game descriptions mentions that specifically the males are lion-like in appearance. As for what they look like, or if we'll ever get to see one, let alone play as one, only time will tell. And that about wraps us up for this video. There was too much information about each race to get through all 8 in a single video, but there wasn't enough on each race to warrant their own separate videos, so I'm just gonna have to split this one up into 2 parts. I hate to leave you guys hanging like this, but this video is long enough as it is, and I can't imagine all the editing I'd have to do to make a video twice this long on my upload schedule. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please go ahead and leave it a like, and if you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one. Peace out.